is not feasible due to COVID-19 pandemic and closure of City Hall to members and public. As a result of the foregoing, the special City Council meeting will be conducted solely by telephone and other electronic means as provided in Minnesota Statutes 13D.021, and no in-person meeting will be conducted in the City Council chambers. I think it is important to recognize that using a video conference is not as good as an in-person meeting, but it is necessary. Under the circumstances, we are doing the best we can to maintain transparency and due process. I would appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation as we work through the meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Roll call. Seeing that this meeting is being held remotely, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Councilmember Balsonic.
I am here.
Okay, Councilmember Brox.
Here.
Councilmember Fulch.
Here.
Councilmember Leifelt.
Present.
Councilmember Lund.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
Okay, let the roll reflect that all the members are present and a quorum has been established. Tonight we have a proclamation for the Women Equality Day, and we'll start reading it, and we'll start, if you can go with where your seat is in the chambers, we will start with Councilmember Vaughn.
Will we be bringing that up?
Yes, do you have it?
Not in front of me now.
Oh. You should have it in your packet.
Yep, I'll have to go to the packet. So
Give me a minute and I'll pull it up on the screen. Give me a minute.
thank you, appreciate that.
Thanks, Dan. Sorry, I was going to talk about that in the workshop and I forgot to bring it up.
All right, whereas on January 10th, 1918, a constitutional amendment allowing women's suffrage was passed by the United States House, and
Whereas on June 4th, 1919, a United States Senate passed the 19th Amendment and sent it out to the states for ratification, and
Whereas on September 8, 1919, 9 years after my mother was born, Minnesota ratified the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, and
Whereas on August 26, 1919, the 19th Amendment was certified as part of our Constitution, assuring that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. And
Whereas the 19th Amendment did not guarantee suffrage for all women, including Native Americans, who did not gain the right to vote in every state until 1962. In Pacific Islander Americans, it was 1952. And many African American and Latin Americans did not gain their voting rights until passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and 1975. And
women of every race and class and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation, community in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and today in other important movements. And whereas communities across the state are celebrating the passage and ratification of the 19th Amendment providing for women's suffrage to the Constitution of the United States, and
now therefore it be resolved that the City Council of Hastings hereby proclaims August 26th as Women Equality Day, to hereby call upon the people of our community and interested groups and organizations to safely observe August 26th as Women's Equality Day, with appropriate ceremonies and activities to honor those who fought for promoting the values of our republic and women's suffrage. We, the City Council, further urge all people to use this occasion to reflect on the importance of achieving equal rights and opportunities for women to dedicate themselves anew to that great goal. For the cause of equal rights and opportunities for women is inseparable from the cause of human dignity and equal justice for all. Adopted by the City Council of the City of Hastings this 17th day of August, 2020. Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes from the workshop and the regular meeting of August 3rd? Seeing none, they are approved. Comments from the audience? For public comments, we have options. Oops, am I still there? Sorry. We have options to be mailed in prior to the meeting, as well as interactive feature during the meeting. For the emailed comments, they have been forwarded to City Council and their receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on the agenda will not be discussed this evening. We ask for the attendees use the raise hand feature and they will be invited to speak one at a time. I also want to remind everyone that the public comment period is not intended for an extended dialogue. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? I don't think I'm seeing any. Okay. Council items to be considered. Council, are there any items to be considered? Okay, seeing none. Council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Fulch,
Second, Your Honor.
Councilmember Liefeld, discussion, council. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsonic,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Tonight, under administration, we're going to see a utility rate study update. And with us tonight, we have Jeannie Voigt of Ellers with. Jeannie, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, it's Stacy Quilvang. We got the wrong name on there. So nice to see you. And nice to see all of you council members. I'm just going to pull up the screen to share here. Is everybody seeing that screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, nice to see everyone, and albeit not in person. Good to see you after so many years. It's been nearly 4 years since the last time we had a discussion about your utility rates. Say a couple things just off the top that I want to state is that, you know, when we looked at what you did in 2016 and everything that was planned and where you're at today, you guys did a lot of the hard work, shall we say, or made a lot of the tough decisions back in 2016. And so tonight, before you really all you're doing with your utility rates is that the increases are really inflationary, if that only, which is to be expected of any system that you have out there and funds that you have out there, which is just to keep up paying for the cost of, staff and servicing and capital improvements that you have. So it's a great thing. So that's one of the big takeaways I want you to have from this. The second thing, when we go into this, there will be some little numbers on everything, but that's not so much as just to show you some of the background work we do, but the reality is I'll have the takeaways in the blue boxes for discussion, or just the highlights of the rate study. And then third, SAC and WAC is up for discussion again. And so Mayor, after we get through all that, and at the end, I'll bring it back to the options that we have for you on SAC and WAC, that we're going to need some direction from you guys as a council on tonight. So we'll have to facilitate to get feedback from everyone on their thoughts and perspective with regards to that.
Okay.
So one, we're going to talk about what the enterprise funds are. We're going to go back in time to the 2016 utility rate study. I know many of you were on the council back then, and I'm sure you remember it all with great detail. Talk about our findings, and then going forward, what we're seeing for the funds. So just in general, utility funds, they're enterprise funds. And what does it mean to be an enterprise fund is essentially, those should be money makers for you. You're supposed to run them like a business. So they should be flush with cash. They have to pay for your capital outlays, your operations of the system, and your replacement reserves you have, and any debt that you may have. And at a minimum, you should have 6 months of operating expenses, including depreciation, following year's bond and debt payments, if any, funding for your capital equipment that we have in there, and then flexibility really to accommodate unforeseen repairs or issues that may come up with the system. So again, when we talk about these, for most communities, we do say that they are flush with cash, and they should be. A lot of cities will use this for their internal borrowing purposes as well, for all the things that you have to buy and do in a city. So you don't have to go out for bonding, but you have a source for those issues that may actually come up. When we did the utility rate study back in 2016, one of the big changes we made was assuring that your fixed charges paid for the fixed costs of the system. And so your fixed costs of the systems are what is there no matter what. So when people go to turn on their water, they want to make sure it runs, or they flush the toilet. They want to make sure that the waste is disposed of. So it's paying for your staff that's related to it. It's some of your meters, the water meters that you have. It's billing the system, and then paying for some of the stuff that you have to maintain your system with. And so again, when we did that study back in 2016, we found that the majority of your fixed costs were not being paid by your base rate charge. It was actually be paying by user rates, which is kind of a flip-flop. And as you know, or if you recall, user rates fluctuate, right? Because it depends on how much water people use. So in a dry year, they're using a lot more water, which we're all like, yay, it's more revenue to the system. But in a wet year, they're using less. So again, we always want to make sure that those fixed charges are actually covered in case you have a wet or dry year or whatever is going on. So we changed that to take care of that. We put a new 4-tier structure for the water and for usage and for conservation, and it was to better align with what we were seeing happening with all the user categories that you had in your community. And then we had significant rate increases in the early years to start to build and maintain some cash balances. And again, that's where the council in 2016 had some difficult and tough decisions to make. And it was pretty significant changes that they had to make, but they were willing to do it, and that really has paid off. Had a mixture of cash and bonding to pay for the capital projects. And then again, pardon me, back in 2016, again, SAC and WAC was up for discussion. And so at that time, the council decided to do a 25% reduction in both of those charges. And WAC went from $3,075 down to about $2,300, and SAC went down from $945 to about $700. And both of those rates that they were reduced to, the WAC was probably the lowest since it's been since 2006 at the time. And I think the SAC, if I recall, was about 2005. So that was a drastic reduction. So when we looked at your projections versus actual saying, hey, where did you guys go, and did you follow the study, and where are we at today? Well, you followed the plan, which is great. And that's what we like to see. And at the end of the day, it's put you in a very good position that we'll talk about. And now going forward, it's being modified because the reality is we're seeing less capital needs than we initially thought, that we'll talk about a little bit more going forward. So changes made in 2016 with rates paid off. And the big thing here, the big takeaway is that The second column, the 2020 projected cash balances based on 2016 versus where there are with the circle around it, they're all larger than what was anticipated. So your funds are all in good shape, that you have healthy reserves and fund balance sitting there, that you get that opportunity to use that cash for capital needs that you have, so there's less bonding that is needed going forward. The costs are lower than originally anticipated. When we look at the 2016 study where we anticipated to be in 2020 and where we're at now in 2020 and projecting forward, when we look at the average, the 10-year average of all those funds is down about 14 million. So again, back in 2016, you had a lot higher capital projects that were anticipated. And so that meant you had to increase rates a lot more or higher significantly to help pay for some of those costs. But now that in 2020, we see that your capital needs are a little bit less. We've just aligned them a little bit better with where development and development patterns are going. Those are lower, which is a good thing. So that leads to the fact that less bonding is needed. So if we looked on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, you can see 33.8 million is what we are anticipating bonding for, which is pretty much every year. Now, when we look to the left, borrowing hardly anything. So 70% reduction in your bonding needs. So you're bonding for about 7.5 million. And really there's only a few years in which you have to do that. So again, that's a combination of the cash that you needed for the system building up over time, which was great, and having less projects than what we anticipated that you had back in 2016 compared to today. Reducing your SAC and WAC, it likely didn't spur more development. And, you know, I can say that from being in the development world for over 30 years, developers expect to have to pay their SAC and WAC charges. They understand that that's really going to pay for the larger system. So it's your water treatment facility, water towers, again, those big capital needs that you have for the system as a whole, and that's what folks are paying into. So what's circled there, you can see the reduction in the rates that we talked about, but again, you didn't see a significant increase in the number of building permits that came in with regards to that. The other thing that came out of that is that, you know, if we look at what our loss in revenue from doing that reduction, it was about close to $240,000 that you lost in the funds. They're seeing there 175,000 for the water fund and 64 for the sewer fund. And one of the significant things that staff had to do in changing is that there was the bonds that were issued in 2013A. They were a refunding of the bonds that were done for the water treatment plant before. 75% of that debt service was expected to be paid with the WAC charges. But because there was a reduction and there weren't as many charges that were coming in, you had to end up using your user rates to pay for those bond payments. And there's no anticipation to pay for those bonds going forward. It's usually going to come out of user rates. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's indifferent, but it's just understanding that we had to shift how that major capital for the overall system was actually being paid for. So going forward, again, what we look at now on the right-hand side in the circle, you have about $25 million in capital projects over the next 10 years. So that's almost 14 million less than what we anticipated before. And the numbers that are highlighted in the gray, those are just highlighting those because those are the years we anticipate that you're going to have to likely issue debt going forward in. Now, again, as we talked about before with this study, this is not a static document. It's not meant to just stay here forever and never look at it. So staff intently looks at it every year to see where it's balancing out with regards to the plan and if you're going to have enough cash to meet your obligations into the future that you have it. So as noted, most of your bonding really is going to be over on the water side, which is not atypical. So again, lots of small numbers. At the end of the day, again, rate increases are really only to keep up with inflation. And I'm going to show you this on each user, on your median user. And so the recommended increases that we had in prior years really did pay off, and it's put you in a good financial position with all of your funds. So when we look at residential development, essentially for the median user, utility bill for 2021 is projected to go up less than $3 a quarter on where you need to go and in future capital that you have out there. Likewise, for commercial properties, for the median commercial user, it's about $25 a quarter that it has to go up based upon our recommendations in the study. So again, not a significant impact to the end users, which is one of those things we're always cognizant about, and which is great because I think prior you would have had to have more significant increases, and that's why we looked at kind of doing a full rate study here again in 2014 to rebalance you out. So we look at comparable communities, our friends that are out there for Cottage Grove, Egan, Farmington, Rosemount, Burnsville, Apple Valley, Inver Grove Heights, and Lakeville. You're still falling in line about where you were middle of the pack with regards to that. And then as you recall what we talked about in 2016, that, I'm never a fan of this slide for comparable communities because I think the thing to note is that every city pays for things differently, okay? So some cities use their utility funds to help pay for their street reconstructs when they're doing the pipes underneath the road. Other cities use a tax levy to do that. Some cities have a franchise fees that may go to pay for some of these improvements. Others don't. So again, everybody pays for everything differently. So even though you can look at rates and compare yourself to your neighbor, it may be different or you may be higher or lower just based upon how you actually pay for things. So at the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable as a council and a community what you're charging your users. And you have a very valid system and plan in place here that shows that what you're charging you actually need to run your systems and to maintain them for the long term. Your water fund, as proposed today, again, as we look in 2020, the orange is where your reserves are where we'd like you to be, and the blue bar is where you actually are. And what I can say is we always like to see the blue bar, the orange line. And the reason why is that, again, we talk about these are enterprise funds, these are businesses, and so they should be flush with cash. So what that has for you as an opportunity is that as projects come up, it's nice to have that cash there to be able to plan for and pay for it. And in addition, if something unforeseen comes up or an emergency repair comes up, you're going to have significant cash to take care of that, and it's not going to affect your fund balance per se. When we look at the sewer fund, again, when we look back in 2017, your first year, you were below your targeted cash balance. And for those of you that were on the council in 2016, if you recall, your cash balance was almost zero in this fund. So this is where we had to do some significant work to get you up to speed to where you need to be. So again, in 2020, you got a lot more cash than anticipated. And again, for both of these funds, it's because there was less capital that came out of these. So we start to balance you out or normalize you a little bit more 10 years out. And then the stormwater fund, again, we're just building reserves really because you have a future pond dredging, which can be expensive and we don't have the costs allocated for that. So we're planning for that well into the future, but no bonding's recommended. So at the end of the day, like I said, it's great to see that your funds are healthy, that we don't have to borrow as much money for projects you want to do. And if projects come on sooner than what you had anticipated or get moved up on the CIP, we think that you're going to be okay because you have some cash reserves to adjust and take care of that. So Mayor, we'll move into the discussion about the SAC and WAC. As you know, the sewer access charge and the water access charge, they're charges that are authorized by statute, and they can only be used for construction, reconstruction, enlargement, and maintenance of facilities and infrastructure. And these fees are typically paid at the time of platting, and the number of SAC units are determined by the Met Council. So if the Met Council says your commercial business is going to require 40 SAC or SAC credits, that's typically what the cities will mirror. So it's same for same, and everybody understands that. Individual cities don't set their SAC unit determination. Again, I can tell you in the Metro, they all set it in accordance with how many units that the Met Council states that they need. So again, WAC was previously used to pay 75% of that 2013 A bonds, which was for your water treatment plant and construction and the well and the pump house. But you guys in this year have stopped paying for that because there's not enough revenue in the WAC fund. You're going to deplete it pretty quickly. Again, new developments can and are used to paying your SAC and WAC fees within the metro area. You guys are in the metro, and it's no different for the builders and developers that are coming in. Now, as you know, your city has a loan program for small businesses, which are 25 employees or less, to pay SAC and WAC over a 10-year if needed. Mr. Hinson can relay if that has been used heavily or not, but it's a great opportunity that you guys noted that back in 2016 that you wanted to try and do something for some of those smaller businesses. And, and as a council and HEDRA, you can do additional program policy for those business expansions or targeted businesses if you deem appropriate. You're not alone. I would say probably the biggest request that we see or that communities do is restaurants. When cities want those, they're big water users, so they usually have a big and hefty fee. And so typically we see more cities tailor programs around that. So again, you've got a great program in place for smaller users. You can have a discussion if you want to modify that in the future to help some other developers and developments and businesses in your community or not. So what we found is that you have less needs in your sewer fund. So we have an opportunity to lower your SAC fee significantly, but you have a lot more capital needs in your water fund. So we need to increase that water access charge fee. And so what we have before you are a couple options. Option one, you could keep rates as they currently are. So again, $2,300 for WAC and $700 for SAC, so a total of about $3,000. If you do this, what happens is then we have to shift some of those costs and paying for things to the end users of the system. So everybody's quarterly on that median user for a residential will go up 11 cents a quarter, and I'm a commercial user, 78 cents a user. Not significant, you say, but again, it's kind of going against the grain of what the theory is that those SAC and WAC charges are supposed to pay for, which is people are buying into the use of your overall operating system. And even though you may not have that expenditure today, there will be expenditures for that capital that are required for the overall system in the future. What we have put in our study and where all of our projections are is that we want to reshift your SAC and WAC. So we want your WAC to come back to where it was in 2016 to the $3,000 a unit. But again, your SAC, because you don't have as much needs in the sewer system, reduce that significantly to $100. And so your total fee was $31.75 or $160 more per unit. So Mayor, we'll come back to this slide after I get through a couple other things here. As we look, Jen, at comparable communities, again, for SAC and WAC fees, Hastings, where you are and where you're going, you're pretty much at the somewhat the lower end that we see. With multifamily projects, you're probably in line or just a little bit higher, but that's without the discounts from the Met Council in there. So it's this one's a little skew, and it's complicated to explain as we go into it. And then as we look at an industrial project with a 60,000 square foot building, you're very comparable with where your communities are around you. So just in general, overall, as we looked at your system, really complex to get into all the details and weeds of doing your rate system to figure out who's paying for what. Are you paying for your fixed costs? Is there fairness in your rates? And then are you promoting conservation overall? And back in 2016, the council made some really hard decisions and made some significant increases over a couple-year period that really helped your system and your utility funds. So they're in great position today. Increases are necessary going forward. They will always be necessary because you need to keep up with inflation because it costs more to run your system. Staff salaries go up, costs of goods and services go up. And then you're going to have future projects that go up and those costs go up as well. But overall, just that inflationary increase, you are still very, very competitive with your peer communities that you wanted to look at. Then again, your enterprise funds are healthy. And so that's great because there is a plan to maintain your fund balances and pay for the future capital that's needed. So with that, Mayor, I will turn it over if there's any questions and then really bring it back to the fact that we would like to get some direction on the SAC and WAC rate options of how the council would like to proceed with that.
Thank you, Stacy. Council, any discussion or questions for Stacy? Not seeing any unmuted or hands. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I understand that the yield from reducing the rates wasn't what we had expected when we dropped that down 25% discount off of what we had originally been going with in prior to 2016. It doesn't look like it spurred a whole bunch of growth because of that. That's, in my opinion, just to the rest of the council, that's obviously one benefit of it, but also I think more importantly maybe is relying on that funding source got us into the bind we were in, right? So none of us, I don't think, maybe one of us might have been on the council at the time, back in that time when decisions were made to lean heavy on the WAC and SAC. But if development doesn't come in, I know that we're looking at some that should be coming through, in the coming months and years. But if development doesn't come in, then we don't get that money either, right? So we have to take that into consideration. It's not just about attracting development with lower rates. It really is about having a stable, reliable revenue source versus projecting what we might see coming in and as far as units of development, whether it's residential built development, new businesses, expansions, and so forth. So that's where I kind of pause a little bit, and I'm not sure if I want to, increase WAC and SAC at all. I don't know if we should gamble on what ifs versus, if we really want to have a strong financial outlook, then we kind of leverage the knowns.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Lund, Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Stacy, going back to your numbers here where the WAC and SAC kind of flip-flopped where the revenue came to, can we just transfer the dollars to even that out today, since one did better than the other, and get the fund balances where we want them to be, and then potentially just keep our model going forward with the 25% reduction?
No, because statutory, you have to collect those and they go into the appropriate funds because you're charging that fee based upon what your need was for that system.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Balsanic.
Thank you, Your Honor. We've got some development in the works. That's the project, the two projects I'm referring to. The one is south of the Catholic Church. The other one is at Northridge and Pleasant. And I think that's going to account for close to 200 units. I see John Hinsman is on board. John, how many units with those two developments?
Councilmember, it'd be about 150 units altogether.
Okay, I'm an artist, not a mathematician. How much do we charge 1 unit per residence? Is that how that works?
That is correct, Councilmember. That's what we charge, 1 unit for SAC and WAC per residential unit. That would be irregardless of an apartment unit or a single family home.
Which was my next question. So if we get the 90 some units there at Schoolhouse Square, those are apartments. It's still a unit per apartment then. So looking into the future, with these, again, I'm not much of a mathematician, but so 150, 250 with those 3 projects, and then we have one that the assisted living facility or special needs facility, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to call it, on County 46. how many units are tentatively going into that one?
And council member, on that one, it could be a range of 70 to about 110 that hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay, so it could be as many as 350 more units in the next 2-3 years if their projects, stay on task, as opposed to what we've been experiencing since I've been on the council. Again, that was starting back with the Great Recession. Residential units of 4 to maybe, if we were lucky, 10 on any given year. And so over the last dozen or so years, we haven't even been close to 100 new units for housing. Does the addition of 350 units do anything to the projected fund for Whackensack, Stacy?
Yeah, so we took into consideration your 2020 projected units, which is about 235 units in some of the projects that you discussed. And we kept that at the existing rate of 2,300 for the WAC rate. And then going forward in 2021, we projected increasing that back up to $3,000 to help capture that. And that has some of your future development in it. So we have that in, and that's what's getting you to your larger cash balances and keeping your rates at a little bit lower. So as noted on the median user, I think it's like 11 cents a quarter increase if we don't change your SAC and WAC rates, if we keep them where they're at today, and 25 cents a quarter for the median commercial user.
So I'm glad you've factored that in. How many brand new commercial entities have coming along on average over the years, John? Building from scratch.
Sure, council member, that's a difficult one to project. Usually, a couple a year, and they can vary in their size. From something that's a few thousand square feet to something that's more significant. I think what's been happening more substantially has been the amount of infrastructure improvements that are being done for businesses and institutions. For example, the Dakota County complex and the hospital are continually under construction and adding to that.
Such things as the tear down and rebuilding of Dairy Queen and McDonald's. Were there increases in the SAC-WAC units for those, or did they stay the same?
Council member, I'm not sure if there was an increase in those or not. I think they're generally going to be based upon square footage sizes. And so if they were very minimal.
I'm bringing all of this up because there's been contentious discussions from certain members of the business community that SAC and WAC rates are affecting development here in the city. And again, as was pointed out here in one of the slides, we lowered them 25%. Did it make any difference? No. I mean, it goes back to the old real estate adage, location, location, location. If a business wants to move here, they're going to move here. They're not going to worry about SAC and WAC fees when they've got a $500,000 building that they've got to worry about. I think the McDonald's rebuild was over $1 million, for example, and I think probably the last thing they were considering was the WAC and SAC fee. When Quick Trip came in, when Napa Auto came in, when all of these brand new businesses came in, CVS and so forth, Schoolhouse Square with Green Mill, the coffee shop there and so forth, they came because they wanted to be here. And for us to tinker around, back and whack, I was part of the council when we made the reduction of 25%. It was kind of like, I don't want to say the council said, well, we dare you now to, to come in and build or to bring developers in. The business community that existed at the time kept harping on, getting these lower fees so we could get new businesses in here. And it really hasn't had remarkable effect. So my feeling is that we should go ahead and adjust the rates according to the recommendations that are here on the presentation were put forth. And again, just to make it clear, we reduced them and it really didn't make any impact on development. We did have a lot of new businesses move in, but they moved into buildings that had already paid for SAC and WAC fees. We've had a good number of new businesses come in, and we've had a lot of renovations with businesses that are already here. But in terms of greasing the wheels and getting somebody brand new from out there more than what we had, it really didn't make a lot of difference. Unfortunately, it would have been nice if they did, but unfortunately it didn't. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Leifeld?
Thank you, Your Honor. To the build it, if you build it, they will come philosophy. I think, in my personal opinion on this is that takes a little bit more time. I don't feel like for most of these businesses, it's a overnight decision or even a, calendar year. I feel like it's a process. And for these businesses, these big corporations, when we're talking about, CVS's and, those places, that's different than these mom and pop shops. And then on these, apartment complexes and condos, and knowing that they've got to be able to get that money out of the renter, out of the purchaser, or what have you, so my concern is that inflates the cost then, that goes on to, the renter or the owner. And I feel that this is going to take more time. We've, as Councilmember Balsonic pointed out, we've heard a lot from the business community and how this is impactful to their business and how they run on a day-to-day basis. So my opinion and my vote would be to continue where we're at and continue to support bringing businesses to town as we've been putting in that effort. And I'm not willing to cut and run and say, boy, that didn't work out, let's go back to where we came from. So my opinion on it would be that we continue at this particular SAC and WAC agreement or fee scale that we have now and see where we end up. We review this at our next, in our next budget cycle. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Leifeld. Councilmember Brox?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for Stacy, and sorry if this is a complicated question, but you gave sort of some averages of where we fall in line for single family homes and then multifamily. Why is it that we're on the high end for the multifamily? Because that's a lot of what we're developing right now. It seems like we have a lot of more multifamily housing going in. Just in terms of what you're considering in those numbers, do you see other communities giving a discount to multifamily spaces, or why do we end up, if on the high end of that scale?
Yep. I would say that you're may end up on the high end of that scale because some of the cities may give a discount for density bonuses. Okay, so in a lot of those communities, they're building, at over 60 plus units an acre. So it's pretty high density and intense development that's happening. And so in that case, they're generally giving a little bit of a reduction in the fees because of the intensity.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the beginning of the presentation, we were provided two options, it looks like, with the rates. And so the first one was to keep the current rates. And I would be very supportive of keeping the current rates for residential and commercial users, because I think that our increases last time were unpopular but we were willing to do that because we knew it was the right decision to make. However, I don't feel comfortable going into COVID and knowing that we have such high rates of unemployment right now and families being impacted, that I don't feel that it's the right time to be increasing or passing, additional costs on to our users of the utility. And so, so I would have to agree with option 2 of the consultant to shift the rates as recommended. I mean, it seems to me that we're being asked to do something between these two options, and so I don't know if just where this conversation is going, because it seems to me we're being told that we need to make a decision. Here are the two options that are being presented to us by the staff and the consultant, and we need to pick one, or do we have a third option, and that's to table it for a while? And I'm not sure, what that actual option looks like. And so I'm just throwing that out there for their deliberation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Brox.
I have another question. This is regarding the statement that the 2013A bond was being paid for out of the water fund, I believe, but is now not. So my question is, what happens if we need a new water treatment facility, and which fund would those funds be coming from?
Mayor, council member, that's correct. So hopefully you don't need a new water treatment plant.
Or a significant addition.
Yeah. So, typically that would come out of your WAC fund, but now it's just being paid out of the water fund and by user rates that you have. So again, if in fact you continue to have lower SAC and WAC rates, that you're not taking advantage of the benefit of some of the development for users that are used to paying and can, it'll be the end users of the system that will have to have increased rates in order for you to pay for those future and capital improvements.
So I think, Dan would teach, I think this is virtually just discussion tonight. We're not making a motion or.
That's correct.
So we do have time to look at a little more in depth of it if each council member wants to, but this is just merely an update from Ellers for discussion for us, so. Any other question? Yes, Councilmember Fulch.
Just in follow up to what you just said then for Dan, when is your cutoff that when do you need to know? Because if we're gonna do a fee increase, you need to know that by our last December meeting, right, of the calendar year for it to be adopted for the next year, or what are we looking at for timetables here?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that December at its most simple level. It falls into there. Even though it's utility funds, potentially if it might make some. I'm thinking out loud here. Potentially, if it might make some changes to bonding that the city would do, even though they're sourced by the utility funds, not the general fund. I don't think that it would have any impact on what you might be doing on the levy. So I think you could wait till December.
Your Honor.
I hate to push all the decision after that, but that's the drop dead.
Sure. Councilmember Lund?
If I remember, we didn't even actually touch this until the new year last time. It was 2016 discussion, but that council actually pushed it into 2017, if I recall. And I think we voted on it in February or something. So if that answers any questions on timing for bonding, but not that we would do that again. I'm just saying it happened last time, so.
Mayor, if I may, I think, yes, you can have further discussion on this, but I think from a staff perspective, we'd like to know what information do you think you need in order to make a decision on which way to go? Because there's probably 27 ways that you could slice and dice it. So one, you could just keep rates as is, and then we could modify the end user rates. You could go with the recommendation as is, that puts you in a different place or position. But your third option is, at the end of the day, if you have concerns about increasing your rates by $160 a unit, well, is there something else that you want to maybe expand your existing program that you have, which is for businesses of 25 or less? Or are there targeted businesses that you just want to give a discount to? So we really kind of need direction on what you're looking for so we can come back with some of that analysis and options for you.
Okay, thank you, Stacy.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Lund?
Yeah, I guess that's where I would be leaning towards Stacy, is understanding maybe some of those additional programs or opportunities for some of those situations that we've all come across where maybe there's a good opportunity to lessen that fee or adjust that fee where appropriate, and then still holding pat on maybe the recommendation that you have in front of us. But that would help, I think, making decisions on my part, at least.
Sure, thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Brock?
I liked Councilmember Liefeld's point about the difference between a corporate business with a large corporate developer who expects such fees compared to a local mom and pop who maybe hasn't opened a business before, or maybe they have opened a business before, but they're not in a restaurant business, or they're not in a certain business that has other requirements like this. A way to create a system that we would treat those two kinds of end users or clients differently, so that and part of it is a charge to us to do a good job of educating our residents and our business owners about how these fees work and what they're used for, and that they are significant in terms of keeping our infrastructure up to date. So there's that piece that's on us, but is there an opportunity to maybe make a different two option or more tiered structure for these sack and whack rates, because they often are very surprising to small business owners and are painful. So that's kind of what I think would be a good solution, but I don't know what that looks like.
Mayor, Councilmember, I mean, that's something that we can certainly look at. And I think part of that analysis just comes from, maybe we can do a little look at the type of businesses that have had to come in and what they've actually had to pay. Again, your existing program gets at those mom and pop ones of 25 or less, that they have a 10-year period that they can pay those back. They're still charged the same fee. The reason why we typically like to charge the same fee for everyone, because it's all users of the system and they're paying equally. But I do get it. And some communities may look at a discount or other things, but that's something we can go back and discuss as staff.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'm leaning more towards the recommended. If you look at what we're doing now, our residents are paying the difference. So we lowered that 25% and our residents had to pay it. And I think it's time to, as residents, we shouldn't have to keep subsidizing this fee that we need to cover our bills for this. So I like the recommendation. We did lower it. And I think we really need to go on, Councilmember Brock's talked about this. We might be more on the educational side, because we learned the hard way, these fees stick with the building. That building needs to be labeled with, hey, this thing's holding so many whack and sack charges. That helps determine where that business should go. You can't carry a whack or sack fee from one building to the other. We just need to educate people to say, hey, if you're looking at opening up a restaurant, this building has this many things. If not, be prepared. There's some fees that are gonna come with it. I just keep looking back at the residents. I get the mom and pop operations, we like them. I think we can work with them on like the feather out option. I don't know if there's a grant thing that we can start over on the Hedra side, but something that says our residents shouldn't have to subsidize these fees, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Councilmember Vaughn completely on this matter. And something for me that I'd like to know is for those developments that we have that are currently in the works, because a few of them are like the high density senior housing. And I would just like to know, will those projects that are already in the works be grandfathered in, or would they be subject to this change? And then how is it that the $160 a unit actually affects the financing on those projects if they aren't grandfathered in? Because I'd hate to derail anything at this point. So that would just be useful information to have for the next time that we have this conversation.
Mayor, Councilor, I could probably answer that right now. So developers will pay based upon what your fee schedule is at place at time of their building permit. So if they pull their building permit before the end of the year, it's going to be at the old rates, if that's when you're going to make your change of your fee schedule. And affecting the financing, that increase may not be overly significant for the projects coming forward, that it would stop them from actually moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Balsanic?
Yes, in a meeting with about 15 business owners approximately 6 months ago, I explained that if the SAC and WAC fees were reduced for businesses, then private residences, the taxpayers would have to, in essence, subsidize the businesses that were coming into town. And I just don't think that's fair. I just don't. And that's why I said here a few minutes ago, we need to go with the recommended rate adjustment. That is the most fair way to go. When a business gets ready to operate, unless they're completely naive, they should know what the fees are involved when they go to set their businesses up and running. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Balsanic.
Mayor, any thoughts from you? Not to put you on the spot, but just want to make sure we get everyone everything
Sure.
that they need.
Well, I never want to increase, so, but I guess I would be willing to discuss it more. I agree with Councilmember Vaughn in what he said, that we have to educate people. And I think we're all learning that we have to educate people on a lot of things, but especially the SAC and WAC, because it has been brought up numerous times. And I have had that same discussion with Joe at that roundtable discussion. And John, I'm going to ask you a question. If someone wants to open a business and they come to, well, you or Tom or whoever, say they're looking at a property that may have credits, do you just automatically say, hey, yes, this does? Or if it doesn't and they need credits, here's another option for you. I mean, is that part of a sale for your department or planning's department?
Yeah, Mayor, when we're talking about redevelopment, most of the time you have an existing building, use was in there, new use comes in, there may be a change in the SAC and WAC. And so that's something that we identify early on. In most cases that aren't restaurants, it doesn't come into effect. But in situations with restaurants, if it was a non-restaurant building, they want to open up a restaurant in there, that could be significant. And that's where we've seen some of the projects not happen because of that. Now, we do have that loan program out there. We have offered that out to a few people. We haven't had a lot of takers on it. And perhaps it's more from an advertisement standpoint from our standpoint, but that's where we're at with that.
Okay. So again, I think it's up to the city to educate these people as they're coming in. I don't have anything else other than, council, do you want to discuss this more or take it further tonight? Or as we talked, it doesn't really need a motion, but we're kind of split as far as what to do. Councilmember Balsonic?
Yeah, Your Honor, again, like Stacy said, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you asked some questions. You didn't say, are you in favor of the recommendation to raise or not? I guess you're the mayor, you should say something. Thank you.
And like I said, I don't really like to see any increases, especially in these hard times. So I'd be willing to discuss it a little bit further. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, Stacy, but with the developing coming in, I don't want to stop that. I think that's we're seeing good initiatives for development. And I don't know, I guess I wasn't in on the discussion how many years ago, and Joe, you stated, you made you made those recommendations. And did it help with our developments? Not necessarily. I don't think it, I don't know. Is building, do they look at that and say, well, it's too high, I'm not gonna go there? I mean, and look at the other options around. But Stacy, you said that the other cities around us, I mean, we're right in place with where we should be. So with that, I don't want to set us back either. I want to stay within the increases that we should have to stay ahead of something that may not look so good in the future. So I guess I'd be willing to go with the recommendation of Ellers.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilmember Lightfoot.
feel like we're kind of sitting in a position that we were sitting in a couple years ago where we get to a council meeting and these are your choices. What do you want to do? And I don't know that this is the time or the forum to actually have us discuss it and dissect it. I personally would like to see, if at all possible, a socially distanced in-person workshop on this. This is a really big decision that I think we can't take lightly. And I know none of us are thinking that at all, but I think it's something that to me is definitely worth having further conversation about in a setting that gives us that time. We've got the information in front of us now. We've got the numbers. And that, I think from here, I feel that we need to sit down and everyone's making excellent points. I'm seeing, some great, feedback here, but I'm not prepared to say, yes, that's what we need to go with. And I'd like to have a further discussion. This feels like a big thing and I don't want to be put on the spot for having to make that decision.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Lightfoot. Councilmember Brox, did you want to speak? Oh, okay, Councilmember Lund?
I mean, I think it warrants further discussion. I think time allows for that, but Stacy has some general direction, I think, from the conversation so far, which is what we were asked for today, was not to make necessarily a decision, but to provide some general direction. So I'm not really sure if we need to debate it any further. We've provided what we needed to provide today. But it's definitely something we need to talk about further.
Okay, Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. At our next conversation about this, something that I'd also like to hear about is how is it that whatever decision it is that we make, how it is that staff are going to communicate these changes, because something I noticed the last go round when we did this was we made this change, we did the rate cut, but the business community pretty much didn't hear about it, or I don't know if they're choosing to ignore it or what it was, but the feedback I was getting after that was, well, the council isn't doing anything to help us with SAC and WAC fees. And it was like, hello, we just, cut them by 25%, because we were listening to what it is that you were providing us for feedback. But yet they didn't get that message. And so, and then furthermore, and I brought this up a few times now in the past, is that, as a council member, this is the number one gripe that I have received from the business community, but yet it's the most confusing, and there's like no information on our website to address it, like a simple question and answer. And like, look at all the questions that we had when it came to the froth and cork opening and such. And so, if we're gonna whatever it is we're gonna do, I would like to know exactly how it is we're gonna communicate those changes, so that we have a clear message, and that people can get resources. Like if there is a question and answer that was developed, and we could provide that to the chamber, and the chamber could email that out. Or, really, I think that we need to have a communications plan to go along with this, because it's just, I thought we did the right thing a couple of years ago, like I said, and yet it's like the message didn't get communicated to the folks that needed to hear it, I guess, because Joe had said he had gone to this meeting with 15 members of the business community, and it was, I'm sorry, Joe, I'm just going to paraphrase it. It sounded to me, the feedback that you've provided is that it wasn't enough, or they didn't want to recognize the efforts that had been done to date, or any of that. And so I just think it's kind of a frustrating situation where we try to do the right thing, and then we still continue to get negative, feedback. So if we are going to do this, like, how it is that we're going to communicate the message? So enough said. Thanks.
Well, the feedback I got from those business people, they wanted the entire SAC and WAC fee structure eliminated. They wanted us to do away with it. I'm flabbergasted that they would choose to be so naive as to suggest that the citizens, the private residents, the property owners in the city of Hastings would pay for the water and sewer fees for businesses in the city, when no other city anywhere in the state of Minnesota does that. It just totally floored me that they would do that. I don't know. I'm trying to be polite here, but I don't understand their business acumen if they are stating that kind of a thing. You cannot get rid of these fees. If you're a business and you're going to use a certain amount of water, you've got to pay the units for it. If you're a household and you use so many units of water, that's what you're going to pay for. I don't think a property owner living in a house with a family of 4 or 3.7 should have to pay for a coffee shop that is 3 blocks down the street. That's not their problem. That's the problem of the business owner that owns that coffee shop, and maybe they'll even sell wine in this place, but it's their problem. They've got to adjust their fees and their profitability accordingly. I see that. And again, the handwriting's on the wall. If we don't increase this, I'm looking at this on my own laptop here. If we don't increase it, we're going to be in the red. And God, do I sound like a bureaucrat? It's only $160 more per unit, all right, in the total scheme of things, $160. Is that going to send developers running to Eagan instead of Hastings? I don't think so. Are they going to run to Cottage Grove instead? I don't think so. Be fiscally responsible here, and the business community needs to wake up more. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mayor?
Councilmember Layfield?
Thank you, Your Honor. I can't speak to what conversations Councilmember Balsonic has had with business owners or possible business owners. My conversations have been quite a bit different than what you expressed, Councilmember Balsonic, in that I haven't spoke to anyone who wants to remove it. I've spoke with everyone I've spoke with, and this is over the last 4 years now. And everyone I've come in contact with is looking for us to be more in line with local communities, the communities that we are competing with. And granted, we've got a beautiful town here. We've got a few things that make us a little less appealing to these developers. One of them is the bus line. You know, when they're looking to build these businesses and get people in and out of town, that is something we're up against. But we also have a beautiful river and some, you know, wonderful amenities around town that we have to continue to market. And I do feel that we need to be better in line with our, hate to use the word competitors, but our, you know, other communities like ourselves. You know, when we look at, you know, the Cottage Grove and the Farmington and the Red Wing and even Rosemount, Apple Valley, when we look at those locations, I feel that we do need to be better lined up with this. And again, we'll go back to a couple of years back when we did agree to lower this. I believe we were given, I may be wrong on this, for those of you who were with us then, I think we were given 6 options or something. We had options A, B, C, D, and E or something like that. And we talked about it and we really needed another option. And so Councilmember Lund, when you say we're not voting on anything, but we need to give them direction. Well, if we're giving them direction that, yeah, I kind of like the second idea. Let's cut one and let's add it to the other. I'm not sure that I still can't get on board with we've just given them direction. The direction, if we send, you know, Ellers away with, yeah, they're going to go with that. And then we all get together and talk and it's like, you know what, we found another variation. I'm not sure that was direction. I again would like to see us sit down, not on Zoom, where we can, you know, community room where we can all separate nicely and have this conversation and come in with the numbers and the data that we have so we can talk about what we're hearing and what the expectation is that we're hearing from businesses in the area. And again, we do say that, you know, we've said from the beginning when we made this decision is the goal to this is to bring the business and to bring the homes here. That happens, then I'm not paying extra for sewer and water. Paying extra for sewer and water, right? The more businesses we have, or households that we have, we're splitting that amount. So yeah, we're all going to pay more if nothing more happens here. And I just don't see that that's going to be the case.
Mayor, if I may just interject, this is Stacy with Ellers. I think we did get some good direction from you as council members, and the takeaway isn't no, let's just go with what we recommended. Everyone brought up some valid concerns and considerations that we can work with the city manager to figure out a time when it's appropriate to come back and schedule in one of your work sessions, and we can work as staff to get answers to some of these questions and bring it together for a fuller discussion.
Great, thank you, Stacy. I think that'd be great. Council, is that okay with everyone else? I'm seeing heads nod. Okay, I guess that's our recommendation for tonight then, Stacy. That'd be great.
Right, nice to see you all.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Next, we have CARES Act. For this item, we will have City Administrator Dan Waticha give us some more information.
Well, hopefully there's some action on this one. There are 3 specific and 2 up to recommendations that help you consider passing tonight. Some of it is also just informational. To recap any of the hours of discussion that we've had previously, but just to focus on the pieces before you tonight. Recommendation for some workstation cubicles for the police department to aid in social distancing as they've had to change some of their layout for the supervisors and the squad room. Recommendation for some shelving for the fire and EMS department, largely due to maintaining supply of PPE as well as additional supplies that have come from the state and the county, needing to reconfigure some of the storage. Third recommendation is for lockers for fire EMS. With our, due to COVID, with our switching over to weekend duty crews back in March, it's changed some of the in-person or in-department availability and storage needs, as well as we're in process of changing the response model for more of the calls to be responding to the station and then dispatched out on a truck rather than going directly from their personal vehicle to the scene. Anyways, having that more in-station presence really is just needing some staff storage, so some lockers for maintaining their gear effectively. The fourth one is trying to take advantage of the CARES Act rather than in the budget. It's been 4 years or going on 4 years since we did a community survey. In the very fine print, the idea of doing a survey in the 2021 budget, take the cut. But here's an opportunity to do a community survey by November 15th, because National Citizen Survey, which we've worked with previously, has added some components specific to COVID, which is interesting just in terms of, as we've had some discussions about what the needs are out in the community, what's the impact, what does it mean for ratepayers or taxpayers. This is a way to actually get some data to help with planning and COVID recovery, at least in the long run. Over the phone on Friday, that was estimated at $10,000. The email I got this evening looks like it might be closer to $14,000 for the base survey. Did not get, should have, but did not get pricing on any of their add-on packages for looking at businesses or employees and getting additional COVID responses. But the recommendation is budget approve up to $25,000, so some opportunity to add something on if the city is so inclined. I think that the baseline and the business surveys would be beneficial to us. The last specific item, although granted it's an up to figure, is to proceed with a portion. It is the most expensive portion of the touchless fixtures for the restrooms throughout all the city buildings. The proposal to do the lights, automatic flush, and automatic faucets is probably about $100,000 of that $134,000 figure. But recognizing timelines, wanting to see approval to proceed with that further. The other items in the memo really are more update. I think the discussion on support for nonprofits and social services. The admin committee, I think, would appreciate a nod. Hey, that looks like it's going in the right direction. Come with the specific dollar amounts or the specifics of how the grants would work, or which nonprofits would be anchors. But it really, at this point, there isn't a specific proposal there. There's still some wrestling with which nonprofits are anchors, and still some back and forth correspondence with United Way about whether they would be able to assist us as a third-party administrator with smaller grants. That's the quick version of sort of the update pieces. Whatever discussion you have this evening, obviously I can stand for questions. The admin committee could stand for questions on that section. But I would greatly appreciate if we had approval on those specific purchase requests or those can move forward.
Thank you, Dan. Council? Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Dan. I'm supportive of all the things that you've asked for on for approval for this evening. So I'm doing the Robert's Rules of Order discussion. I'm willing to make a motion to approve the items 1 through 5 as the staff have recommended.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Lund. Any other discussion, council? Councilmember Vaughn.
I can support this. Thank you. I can support it, but I'm a little hung up on that survey one with the unknown number keep changing on us and the value of that today. I just wonder if there's some, it sounds like the committee discussed it, so I'll support it, but that one I'm hung up a little bit on. Thank you.
Okay, Dan, sure. You can speak to that.
Just a matter of clarification, that survey was not discussed by admin committee. That's coming from staff and more specifically from me. It was something that I had initially included at $20,000 based on prior expenses and brief internet research on the approximate cost to do the baseline survey. It included in my budget considerations, but in discussion about, even though things might be important, trying not to do studies and more immediate results, cut it from my 2021 budget. On Thursday morning, happened to have a conversation with another manager that indicated that HOCO or NCS, who we worked with previously, had deliberately updated their basic survey to include some COVID and COVID recovery type focus to it. So Friday afternoon, talked with them, and actually at 6:33 this evening got an email. So that piece, I hate that there's not a more firm number, but it really has been a work in progress just over the last couple of days. The quote for, without my being able to question back, because it just came this evening, but the quote for just the baseline was $14,000. And I hope that gives some clarification. It was not discussed at the committee.
Okay, Councilmember Brox.
Yeah, and just to speak to what the admin committee discussed, just in case there's any confusion, is we talked about the nonprofits portion, so like the lower half of the memo, where we talked about the economic support for social service. That's what we've been talking about in our committee meetings, and just how we can have a low cost process that doesn't require a lot of administrative overhead. That's the part that we've been discussing in committee, just so you know.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Brox. No other discussion. Clerk Flatten, could you please call the, oh, excuse me, Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just had some follow-up questions, since this is the only discussion time that we're having about the CARES Act and funding. And so I would like to hear from Dan as to what his plans are for moving forward and making final decisions, because I've been maintaining my spreadsheet. And I think to date, we've authorized $118,000 roughly of expenditures. And then I wasn't clear if we had formally made a motion or not yet to authorize the city being paid back for the business heart expenses that we've had to date, because we had $181,000 for the heart grants, and then $25,000 for the downtown barriers, and then the $27,000 for the refunds. So I wasn't sure, have we formally made that decision yet as to that we're going to pay ourselves back? Because I don't remember making a motion to do that. And so, and then there's a few other items on here that are still, kind of outstanding. Like for instance, the request for $114,000 for the mobile command unit, the emergency operations center wanted $44,000 for AV. So there's all these other things that are out there. And then the last piece is that $250,000 that we had allocated for the business grants. So I had texted Commissioner Slavic, and he said that sometime this next week they'll have a better understanding as to who's getting awarded those grants and how it is maybe, then what our list might look like coming back that didn't get funded. So I'm just kind of throwing it all out there because I would really like to have a firmer grasp as to where are we going? What's our decision-making process look like? Because I feel like these meetings, we just kind of wander through them and I'm not really seeing the end game or a lot of structure as to how it is we're doing this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Dan, can you speak to Councilmember Fulch's questions?
I can try to and hope that it at least answers most of it or the substance of it. Without a specific vote, there have been multiple comments about wanting to make sure that the city covers expenses incurred. And I would believe that includes the HART grant and other expenses downtown. But you're correct that there has not been an individual vote on that line item. But have been including that in the total. I believe including the 250,000 voted for business assistance, the up to 250,000 voted for some sort of social service, nonprofit assistance, including the various costs that have been directly incurred or estimated incurred, even if they did not have a specific vote. I believe that those total, including those business and nonprofit assistance, were somewhere around $1.35 million. So there's still, maybe it's 1.4 million. There's still about $300,000 left, which might go towards some of the other projects. You mentioned the mobile command that I know has had some differing discussions or differing opinions at the city council. But obviously that or some other items have not been voted yet.
Oh, right. Okay, good.
And the other, if I just to finish that thought, some of those items, including that, I recognize fall into not just a differing opinions on council, but they're a bit of a gray area about how they would be viewed when audited. So I do think if they might be voted in favor, we do need some input from our auditors about where they see that in the eligibility before we overstep something. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Does that answer your question, Tina? Councilmember
Sort
Fulch?
of, kind of. That was still kind of, it didn't definitively say, yes, at the next meeting, we're going to make final decisions about how to, finalize this whole decision-making process. In follow-up to the conversation that the administrative committee was having about nonprofit assistance, as Dan had placed within the memo, we did discuss $40,000 or $50,000 awards to like the YMCA and the Hastings Family Service as anchors. Councilmember Brox later in an email just to our small group brought up our chamber, our local chamber, as a possible, because that's obviously an anchor to our community as well, but it wasn't fitting the the definition of it as to what we were looking for. And so I did follow up, and I had a conversation with Christy Vars to really get a better understanding of what her needs are, since we haven't had the opportunity to have the COVID Small Business Task Force come together, so that we could talk to her in person. But what she had said was that the chamber hasn't been eligible for anything to date. So any of the grants that are out there, they weren't eligible for the deed grant or the Dakota County grant. Christy said that the nonprofits aren't eligible for the Dakota County grants. So that's a heads up for us as we were having conversations about supporting the nonprofits, because we were making an assumption that they were being treated like a business when that's not the truth. And so, so I would like to have conversations specifically about at our next council meeting about the $250,000 that was set aside for the Dakota County Business Grant Supplement. And if we don't use all of that, that we look at earmarking some of that funds for our chamber, because they've been, Christy Vars has been absolutely amazingly supportive in throughout the pandemic about having the Friday business calls for, to be connecting elected officials with the business community, and all the efforts that they've been doing. They've been trying to do now a marketing campaign to give people confidence in being, shopping local and being at our establishments and stuff. And so, I mean, talk about critical. They're almost an extension of our city staff at this point. And so I think that we should have more specific discussion about that at our next council meeting. And we really have to pin down like how much money it is that we are going to make available to the nonprofits. We didn't discuss this as what are our next steps during the admin committee meeting. I just kind of threw out their hypotheticals. And so, Dan, I'm not sure what it is that you're asking for us. What do you need from us? Because you put it in the memo, kind of a general conversation. Are you looking for one of us to make a motion specifically then to allocate, I'm asking you, what is it that you'd like for us to do? Are you asking for us to say more definitively that, yes, we would like to make funds available specifically for the Hastings Family Service and the YMCA and X amount of dollars? What are you looking for direction from us? Because I'm not seeing what is our time frame. Like if, as a project manager, what are our deadlines? What are our goals? What are we going to achieve? When is it that you need to have your cutoff? Like, how is it that we can help you in this decision-making process?
Thank you, Councilmember
I'm not
Fultz.
sure who us is at this point. What I've requested of the city council this evening are 5 specific expenditures.
Yep.
Separately, the administration committee has had some discussion, and if I misunderstood, I apologize, but I did not feel that what they discussed for an hour and a half came with a specific, here's a recommendation to the city council. There was different talk about what might or might not be an anchor, different levels of anchors. Subsequently, there was an email saying, what about this nonprofit for an anchor? We were still waiting on some confirmation with United Way about whether we could partner with them or not, and if we did, what that might look like for the smaller grants. So until that gets firmed up, I don't know that there's a recommendation from the committee to the council. So what are we waiting on? I can't quite answer that. It's determine where you see those anchors, what makes somebody eligible, are there different levels of it? Obviously still needing to get some confirmation from United Way if they can work with us. If not, where do we go from there? Somebody else, or can we pull it in-house? But yeah, it's in microcosm, it's like the CARES Act overall. A lot of it's been fluid and trying to get pieces of it pinned down as best we can.
Okay, so then I understand next steps on that particular piece for the administrative committee is that you'll get back to the 3 of us and let us know once you've heard more definitively from the United Way as to what they're willing to commit to or not commit to. And then we'll again regroup and we'll make a decision and recommendation sometime maybe in the next week then. So that to have it prepared for the next council meeting. That's what I'm asking for.
I can't give you a specific timeline on when other than I can put a follow-up question out to United Way, but I can't give you a specific timeline on when we'll have that piece of information. Our charter, I believe it's charter, maybe it's the code, but we require 3 business days notice before scheduling a meeting. So, unless we suddenly get it tomorrow, this week's already out for scheduling a meeting. So it just somewhere, it's tough to schedule a meeting until we have the information or no. If we schedule a meeting, say, hey, we can schedule for Thursday, but we're still waiting on information. We just had another meeting.
Okay.
So it just, yeah, we can schedule a meeting in the next week, but until we have the information for you guys to make a specific recommendation, I don't know that it's worth scheduling a meeting tonight or tomorrow until we actually have the information that you need in order to make a recommendation to council. I know it sounds circular, but it's.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think to kind of wrap this subject up, staff gave us some requests in here, and there's specific, and we have a motion and a second. I think we need to vote on the ones that are in front of us, and then I have all the faith in the world in the administrative committee, but I think the key that I'm hearing tonight is, I think if the administrative committee gives direct discussion of where we want to go with it, that's who should be making the contacts out in the community, so it's consistent, so we're not having one-off conversations with somebody. The conversation should be city administrator talk to the chamber president, if that's what the committee recommends. In the meantime, we keep hashing back and forth. Staff did what they asked us. They put 5 items in front of us. He's asking for approval. We got a motion a second. Let's vote on that. Go back to the administrative committee and start to hammer this thing down to get to us. I trust them all. I think what's coming in front of us is the steps we need to get. But right now, I've never seen things get so dragged out. It feels like it's not good for the community. Our community, we need to be more specific of where it's going. And I've said from the word go, we got to take care of our city assets before we talk to everybody else in the community. That's so important to me. And my committee members are here listening. The community's listening. That's where I think we have to focus on the CARES funding first. And if I'm a staff member, that's a direction I take right away, and then go to the next step. So I say ask for the vote here, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll. If Councilmember Fultz, did you have something else to discuss? You're unmuted.
I'm sorry. Just one more thing is that I would like to make a motion after we're done with this about approving that the city just pay back its business hard expenses, so that it's formalized, we just have to we need to. It doesn't feel good to me not knowing what our process is, because I feel like I'm not sure what's going to be on each council meeting agenda, what it is we're going to discuss, and how it is that we're going to nail down things like, for instance, like such as payroll expenses, and then this issue about like the business heart grants. And so, I'm a very organized, systematic person, and I don't feel comfortable when it's like I don't know what to anticipate as we're moving forward in the decision-making process. It just makes me very uneasy. And so that's why I'm looking for what's the structure. It hasn't been clear as to how the decision-making process is going to move forward. So that's why I was asking for that kind of feedback.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Vaughn.
Wait for the vote. We got.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Vaughn, did you want to speak? Okay. And to that, Tina, I think staff is doing their job. They're doing their job. It's maybe not as fast as you want to see, or some of us want to see, but they are working so hard on this. So let's just let them do their job
And I
and
didn't say that they weren't. I was just
Sure.
asking for structure. And so there's
Okay.
clearly a difference. And so I would like just to articulate that I didn't say that whatsoever. So
Okay.
thanks.
let's call the roll. Clerk Flatten?
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
Aye.
Member Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. Motion prevails. Thanks, Dan, for all your work and efforts, and finance. Thank you as well. Tonight, we have, for another item, we have the utility bill adjustment, and Dan will be giving us that as well.
Yeah, we received this correspondence from Mr. Carl Haney. He has a mixed-use commercial property on the main floor and apartments upstairs downtown. One of the upstairs tenants had if there's a running toilet or something that had a running water. So there was excessive water and going the other way, sewer usage on the property, and we got suddenly a $3,000 or approximately $3,000 quarterly bill, and asked to basically plead his case with the city council to have some sort of reduction. So that is what's before you. I will say that it is something that in general, I believe staff does not recommend or support. Sympathize with the difficulty, but it was actual water usage. And if there's some issue or discrepancy between the landlord and tenant, that is a private matter that should not involve policy or be bringing to the council. So anyways, giving him his opportunity to plead to you.
Thank you, Dan. Council discussion? Councilmember Brox?
Is the requester on the phone with us tonight?
I'm not certain. It looks like he might be. Somebody listed as service meeting conductor is raising their hand. So let's bring them in and hope that's who that is.
Okay,
He
thank
has a
you.
raised hand, yes. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Mary. This is Carl Haney. Feels a little bit like Old Home Week.
Okay.
And once, I guess we used to be, well, we were friends for a long time, and now you run the joint.
Okay. Thanks, Carol. Welcome. Let's hear what you have to say, please.
Okay. So, we received this water bill on August 12th, and we had just heard from one of the tenants who had told the person that runs the restaurant downstairs that he thought he had a leaking toilet. And so we went to the apartment building because he was going to be moving out. I opened the door and immediately heard the toilet running. I got this water bill for like $3,056 for that property from a toilet that was just running clean water right down into the sewer. I guess when I talked with somebody at the city, they told me that they had sent somebody a couple weeks or a couple times even out to our building, that there was an issue somewhere with a water leak somewhere, but we didn't get that message. And I'm wondering, and I asked her, I said, couldn't we have gotten a phone call or a letter or an email? She said that we didn't have those resources and that they were doing it out of a, I don't know, what a courtesy. And, that was probably in the letter that I had sent that I think you all had gotten. We would understand that our responsibilities as a business owner, it would just be nice, I guess, that if we could get some kind of direct communication to us, because we got a bill okay every 3 months. And I would assume that a letter could have got to us sometime within 3 months that would have told us of this. The person who lived in that apartment was of Mexican descent, spoke very little English, and I don't think he understood the ramifications of what his running toilet could do. And according to the water department, that 1/8-inch line that runs down that tube ran 398,000 gallons of clean water down it in 3 months. And then on top of it, that particular billing cycle ended the end of June. We didn't get our bill till the 10th of August or right thereabouts. And the end of that billing cycle was the end of June, which means the toilet probably ran for another 40 days into the next billing cycle without our knowledge. Now, I guess what we're struggling like every other business owner trying to, where people can't pay rent. And, we don't want to evict people, and we can't during the COVID, which we wouldn't do probably anyways. But we just are asking for some kind of dispensation if that's possible. And we're throwing ourselves at your mercy, I guess. Have I made that pretty clear?
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Councilmember Balsanic?
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. I was on because I was asking whether Mr. Haney was,
Oh, I'm sorry.
was on board with the, for his presentation. But thank you, Mr. Haney, for attending the meeting and bringing this up. It's my understanding, and this is for Dan, it's my understanding that when there is some kind of anomaly with water usage, that there is notification of some sort that goes out to the property owner. I remember when when my wife and I installed our sprinkling system years ago, we got a letter from the city saying that our water usage had increased, and they wanted us to check and see if there was any kind of a problem on our lines that we could correct. And I called and I said, well, it's our sprinkling system. Okay, fine. I guess I'm having a problem with the fact that a city staff member went to the building rather than contacting the building owner, the person responsible for the bill. We have the address of the Haneys, and so it would seem to me it would have been a lot easier just to put 55 cents on the stamp, write a letter, and send that out rather than sending a staff member out to the building. Mr. Haney says maybe a couple of times. It's fairly obvious that the people who occupy the building are not the owners, are not the ones responsible for the bill. So I'm having difficulty with the procedure for contacting the property owner.
Your Honor,
Thank you, Councilmember Balsanic. Councilmember Lightfield?
I have a couple of questions. Having rented in the past, I see on here, Haney Enterprises on 2nd Street, that address located on what we're seeing on our agenda here shows the 2nd Street address. Is that not where Carl doesn't live there, correct? So what address are these bills being sent to? That's my first question.
Are you asking?
Carl?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, the address is 1309 140th Street East. I live in Burnsville now.
Is that where these bills are being sent, Carl?
That is correct.
So this is just showing the property address, but the bill is going to your Burnsville address.
That is correct. Yep, I'm sorry. Jeannie?
Okay, and I assume then that your tenant doesn't pay for water, that's part of their rent?
Right, exactly. And then, of course, like I said, he just didn't understand the ramifications of what this was really costing, I think, when that toilet just sat and ran.
So I've had two similar experiences myself that I'm just trying to get my head around whose responsibility this is, Carl, just because
Yeah.
many years ago, I rented a home over on First Street. I'm not gonna lie, the noise my toilet was making was annoying. That's all it was until I got my bill.
Ooh,
So I was renting at the time. As the renter, I was responsible for that bill. So I called the city and said, "Hey, what on earth is this?" I still didn't connect it, and I speak almost fluent English, and I didn't connect it. But luckily, when I called City Hall, I believe it was Kim who recommended that I probably had some sort of a leak somewhere. So I
right.
got that taken care of. I then had a similar incident at the bank where I'm at, and the city did get a hold of us. They sent us a letter. They actually did come out to the bank as well. After a number, I think it was probably after 2 quarters of our bill being significantly higher. And we're corporate. I don't ever see that bill. I
Sure.
don't think anyone ever sees that bill. They just pay it. And thank goodness they came out when they did, because we did have an underground sprinkler system leak
Oh,
that nobody was aware of.
sure.
So in that situation, though, I felt like it was necessary for the city to have some data. I don't know that it was their job to immediately upon seeing that usage number. Oh, and then I had a third incident in a house I owned on 13th. My wife and her 5 children moved in, and my water bill skyrocketed. And again, it did take a couple cycles of them reading it, and the city did get in touch with me. So I guess my concern here is just that I believe this city, did they not, do we have anything on file, Dan, that would tell us whether or not notice was sent of any sort with the bill usage instead of just having gone to the rental unit? Do we show if?
I do not know, but do not believe that there was a separate notice in the bill or mailed. I believe it was.
Do you know if we have any?
That somebody went in person to the building and maybe once left a door hanger on the door.
Okay. My final question then, do we have any sort of a checks and balance in place? Not, is this something we can look at that looks at the usage 1 quarter to the next and sees well over double usage? And Carl, is that more than one unit?
Well, that was the only unit that had a leak, but there's actually 3 units upstairs and a restaurant down below. And normally the bill is somewhere between, it fluctuates. Obviously, summertime, usually more usage because of more patrons. And then wintertime, maybe a little less usage because less patrons. But this year that shouldn't have changed. But normally $700 is typical. And now all of a sudden 3,000.
So during the winter months, it was 758.
Yeah.
And then in spring into summer, it jumped up. You're saying that is not reflective of the restaurant, generally speaking?
Well, it might go up a little bit, but not like that. It might go up, to 800 to 900, but because of the COVID, they were closed. So it shouldn't have gone up at all. Yeah.
Council, no? Any other discussion, council? Councilmember Brox?
Do we have any record or history of similar incidences in the past? I don't know that I have had something like this occur before. Do we have any record? Do we keep records? Or do we have any documentation of having any similar requests and what was decided in those instances?
Dan? Can you answer that, Dan Wadicha?
I feel it would be safe to assume we have had requests in the past. They might have been simply at the staff level. I don't know about coming to specific to council, but in 20 plus years of working with cities, it's not an uncommon request. But I am not aware of any precedent here that the city has given some sort of relief for. There might be, but I'm not aware of a precedent.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Liefeld?
another question kind of, Councilmember Brock's made me think of something. Carl, were all three of those units rented during the months of January, February, and March?
Yep. Of course, as soon as the COVID hit, things got tough for everyone. 2 out of the 3 businesses worked at restaurants and 1 at a beauty salon in the apartments. So it was pretty tough on them. And of course, that makes it tough on us. So.
Okay. Councilmember Balsanic.
Thank you, Your Honor. I kind of wish Nick Egger was here. I don't think anybody here tonight could answer the question, but the assumption is that with that water running down that tube into the toilet and then into the water treatment system, it was clean water, probably 90% of the time. Does that clean water tax the treatment facility, or does it just? I mean, I know it gets mixed in with other water, but is it a case of we charge the sewer fee for the treatment facility, but if that amount of water was not, in essence, treated, was part of other water, can any accommodation be made that way as a possibility?
There
Sure.
arguably, or at least some sort of mental exercise, you could certainly say that the burden on the system was incrementally less because the water did not require the same treatment processes, but it still went through the system from start to finish. Additionally, the system is not operated by the city, it's operated by the Met Council, and the bill that we receive and pass on to our ratepayers is based on the total quantity that went through, not whether it was clean or dirty.
Okay, Councilmember Vaughn?
Thank you, Your Honor. And this is going to be tough, Carl, because I see where you're coming from, but I think on behalf of the city, if we take a backup plan to this, or back up and look at this, we got to be careful on, say, setting the precedence here, because our billing cycle is the way it goes. I don't want to get in the middle of Carl and his renters of how he communicates and how he does his invoicing, or how he runs his facility. We just had a big discussion on how we have to take care of our own enterprise and our own funding system with our water and our sewer, and we got to pay our bills. That's a good question that Councilmember Balsanic talked about, is did it still cost the same amount of money if it's clean water versus dirt? It does. We still got to treat it. They don't look at it. There's no way to separate that. Operational wise, maybe our committee could look at a future of not to exceed, but again, that's going to put us right back into Carl and his renter as in this example. So I think we got to be very careful on, I don't see a specific in front of us. Are we looking, reminds me of the last project that we had, where all of a sudden there's something in front of us saying, hey, council, give a discount on this. I can't support a discount today under our current policy and the way that it is, because we may see one next week and it may not be this large, but it might be one that's $100 is a lot of people, a lot of money to somebody that's a renter, and they're going to be in front of us saying, no one told me, and I want a discount on that. And I think we're setting ourselves up for a constant roll through city council of, hey, can you let this go? So currently the way it is in front of us, Your Honor, I have to make a motion. I can't support a subsidy of this funding of this invoice.
Okay, do I have a second? Councilmember Lund. Additional discussion? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Unfortunately, yes.
Councilmember Fultz,
Yes.
Councilmember Balsanic,
No.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. The motion prevails. Carl, we're sorry for this incident, but you kind of have to see it from our perspective as well. But to maybe the looking forward as to how we do communicate something like this will probably have to be looked at. So
That would be nice. So what about, like, because the next month is going to be the same thing when I get my bill. Let me ask this question. I know the city has offered grants then to businesses that are suffering hardships. Would this be considered that, so I could apply for a grant to help pay for this? I don't know where it's going to come from. And I can't expect this guy who makes $15 an hour to be able to pay a $3,000 bill or a $2,000 bill because his toilet ran. It's just, yeah, it's just frustrating the way it was communicated to us, Mary, that's all. So I thank you for the time that you've given me and being able to allow me to explain myself and what happened. I wish it would have gone a different way, but obviously it didn't. I'll have to figure out some other way to pay it.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Balsanic?
Well, Mr. Haney asked a question about grant possibilities. You could certainly contact the city and, make out an application for a grant. I don't know what the specific yeses and nos are in terms of what would or would not be considered appropriate. I know that the city has waived licensure fees. I know that we've waived late fees on bills. We've done all kinds of things. We've bent over backwards for many of the businesses here in the city. So I would encourage you to, I guess it would be John Hinsman would be the person to contact and see if we're giving money through the CARES Act. We're also giving money through the HEDRA funds as well. And that all starts with John Hinsman's office then. And then just, as you said, Mayor, I think it's extremely important that when these notices are sent out, again, even and they're sent out as a courtesy, we understand that it should be sent to the billing address and not dropped off at the building where the situation is occurring. That to me would be certainly more appropriate. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, our next is a closed door session to discuss pending litigation. First, we'll do any reports and announcements, then we'll go into closed session. Afterwards, we'll briefly return to open session for a formal adjournment of the meeting. So anyone have any announcements? Councilmember Balsanic.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I'll be attending the Board of Directors meeting of the Dakota Communication 911 Center Thursday morning at 8 a.m.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, well, I will start with mine. I guess happy birthday goes out to Councilmember Balsanic and Councilmember Lund. This week is their birthday. So moving forward, Music in the Park at Levy Park, supported by Ruth and George Doffing Charitable Fund. Dirty Shorts Brass Band is on Thursday, August 20th at 7 p.m. A New Orleans style brass band playing everything from jazz to Dixie to funk to blues to rock and roll swing. So let's go downtown. Starlet's Web is on Thursday, August 27th, and that is at 7 p.m. at the Midwest only tribute to iconic female artists of pop, rock, and country from 80s to today. The Power of 10 on Thursday, September 3rd, 7 p.m. features dynamic vocals on awe-inspiring horn selection and a superb rhythm section performing a mix of timeless and current hits. Music in the Park has limited attendance of 250 and social distancing is required. It is free and open to the public. We have several other recreational programs coming up at Levy Park. Bike with Ranger on Saturday, August 22nd at 9 a.m. A park ranger will lead participants on a 10-mile loop to learn about history and wildlife for teens and adults. Please RSVP. Performance in the park on Tuesday, August 25th at 6 p.m. Taiko Arts Midwest delivers a loud and energetic Japanese drum and dance performance, sponsored by Smead Manufacturer Company and a grant from the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council. Raptors in the Park is on Wednesday, August 26th at 6 p.m. A live raptor presentation in partnership with Carpenter Nature Center. Movie in the Park, Secret Life of Pets 2, will be shown on Friday, August 28th at 7:30 p.m. Sponsored by Ardent Mills. Crossroads Church will host family-friendly activities before the movie at 6:30. Please bring a non-perishable food donation to for the Hastings Family Services. City offices will be closed Monday, September 7th in observation of Labor Day. Meetings coming up Tuesday, August 18th, 7 p.m. Heritage Preservation Commission. Wednesday, August 19th at 7 p.m. Park and Recreation Commission. Monday, August 24th, 7 p.m. Planning Commission. Thursday, August 27th, 8 a.m. HEDRA Workshop. Tuesday, September 8th, 5:30 City Council. We have a workshop on diversity, equity, and inclusion. 7 p.m. that same day, we will have our regular meeting of the City Council. At this time, then we will move into a closed session.
Okay. So